if it's a real, viable, practical possibility that tomorrow we're going to have elections. And therefore everything gets sharper, everything is stronger, and people use stronger words in their politics, and people climb every horse in order to reach their political ends. Okay, now there is one single person, soldier, who shot one single shot at one single terrorist. It turns immediately into a topic for election discussion. Okay. Now there is another condition that should be added, and I'll describe it very briefly, and it's very depressing. It's very depressing. And it's a result, it's not peculiarly Israeli. It's a result of many factors, most conspicuous among which is the social networks. The talkbacks and Facebook reactions and things like this. People don't think. People don't have thoughts. People have emotions. Okay? So, here we are. There is a politician on the right who said, yeah, it's a hero. A politician on the left says, it's not a hero, it's a crook, it's a criminal. Okay? Now, everyone who smells the smell of the right and likes it, identifies oneself with that right politician of the right. And everyone who likes the smells coming from the left, identifies oneself. They don't think for a second. They just emotionally identified with one side. Therefore, it was a horrible picture. From my point of view, it was a horrible picture. So the half of the population don't know what they're talking about. They know nothing about the situation, about the principles, about the rules of engagement. They know nothing, but they side with this politician. And then there's another group. They know exactly the zero about. They don't know anything about it as well. They don't know the rules. They don't know the ROEs. They don't know anything, but they side on the other side because now it's a clash between right and left, and it's very unfortunate. It destroys public discourse. It does a lot of harm, and Israel is in this situation of emotion-driven elections for some years now. I'll give you an example which is political, but I mention it just because this is the most conspicuous example. The Likud party, which is the governing party of Israel, participated in the previous elections without a platform. They did not create and publish a platform. Now, this is amazing. Don't you owe the public a description of your views about economy, about social affairs, about population, about science, about education, about politics of the territories, about everything? Don't you? No. The answer was no, we don't. So there was no platform. So how did people voted for them if there is no platform? Not from the height of the head, but from the level of the guts. Right? So it's an emotional form. Or lower. Let's stay polite. So that's unfortunate. It cannot be changed in a minute. I mean, we have to emerge from this position of perpetual elections, and that's very difficult.
Yeah, I wanted to continue a question about the Azaria case, which really brought up a lot of questions of ethics in Israel. And what really worried me as an Israeli citizen was not only to hear the public discourse that you spoke about, but also very senior generals in the army, like Uzi Dayan, like Shmuel Zakai, who came and testified on behalf of the soldier. So my question is, do you think that possibly either the ethical code has been eroded somewhat, or there's ambiguity as to what directives, in practical terms, it means?
The ethical code, I did not mention it earlier, I should have, is used in each and every significant step in the life of a soldier. When you are in high school, preparations for becoming a conscript, you study it. When you're a novice, you study it. When you're in junior command school, you study it. When you're officer academy, you study it. And then during preparations for an activity, I mean, people are not just, being given guns and run to the streets. I mean, they are instructed, they're being taught what are the rules of engagement, what are the principles, what is the mission, what are the restrictions imposed on their activities. So they encounter the principles constantly, and not in a abstract manner, but they're translated into rules of engagement, which means that under such circumstances you're allowed to shoot. Under such circumstances you're not. You're not allowed to shoot. So it's being translated into very practical instructions. So, as it happens, not everyone understands them. Not everyone complies with them under all circumstances. But around the period of the activity of that soldier, Azariah, there were hundreds of cases where troops in the same area found themselves in a clash with Palestinian terrorists of the same kind. And everything was done perfectly well. Nobody was shot when it was not necessary. Nobody ran away from the area. Nobody violated the principles and the rules of engagement and the commands. So that's an exception. When you have hundreds of thousands of people performing activities that are sometimes complicated, then there are the exceptions. There are the exceptions. Usually the media are interested in exceptions. Not only here in the United States too, in Afghanistan, Iraq. They are interested in exceptions. Why are they interested in exceptions? I think because it serves their political agenda most of the time. But even if it's not, it serves their economic considerations because the public is emotional and the public is interested in, in exciting phenomena.
But here the question was why two high-level officers themselves.
Okay, I'll be there in a minute. So everyone studies it, and there are exceptions. Usually they comply with it. Now, I personally know those two officers. There were three actually, quite well, and I don't know why they became witnesses of the soldier. I don't know whether there is some political hidden agenda there or not. But one of them, General Dayan, he was the commander of the Central Command many years ago. And he made a suggestion that the IDF create a committee of inquiry. There is some procedure for creating an inquiry commission. Inquiry commission consists of 5 people, some of them experts, some of them lawyers or justices, and they go into all the details. So he tried to put an end to the public noise, which is wrong, which is doesn't help anybody who is really responsible, by creating a committee. The committee will work. The committee is trustworthy. They're people that everyone trusts. They will work, 6 months. They will come with a report. In Israel, 6 months is eternity, so nobody's going to be too much interested in their results 6 months from now, except for a few journalists and a few marginal politicians, because they are interested in something else already, and that will settle the issue. So that was sort of a practical suggestion, but it's wrong. I think he was wrong. He mentioned during the proceedings that under some circumstances he gave the order that all the terrorists should be killed. but that was really misleading the public, perhaps even misleading the justices. When he gave that order, decades ago, there were clashes between the IDF on the one hand and groups of terrorists. They were not militarily organized, but something like a platoon of terrorists or a company of terrorists. Now, when you fight platoon against a platoon, or whatever against a platoon or a company, then your attempts are to destroy them, and you may kill all of them when you clash with them. Those are not civilians on the street that come with a knife. Those are warriors, though they're not militarily organized. So it's irrelevant. So what he said decades ago is irrelevant to the situation in which Azariah was. So it sounded as if he's for him, but actually it was unfortunate, this testimony, to my mind. And I don't understand the attitude.
So thank you, it's very enlightening. I see a clear and very direct efficiency in adhering to the Code of Ethics, and also that's also part of, I guess, the way that it's communicated to the world in terms of the conflicts, clashes with Gaza. But in terms of this is just one situation of the difference between an army that's engaged in an operation versus an army that's administering, and how does one enforce the day-to-day in such a large bureaucratic apparatus made up of individuals that are administering perpetually? It just seems sort of like, I want to know how one does that.
Okay. First of all, the term bureaucracy doesn't fit into what we are talking about. Bureaucracy in the army may fit when you speak about all kinds of personnel, high-ranking officer personnel issues, things like this, then it's a bureaucracy. But when you think about a battalion, the commander, and his company commanders under him, and platoon commander, and all the troops, there is nothing of a bureaucratic nature there at all.
Also issuing housing and stuff like that.
It's constant education. I mean, the people in charge of the education of the troops are the commanders. And the commanders are in daily interaction with them. And the commanders, it's not hundreds of thousands of people. It's manageable. They know what they're doing. They know what they're thinking. They know what their inclinations are. So they implement the system of values of the IDF quite effectively and professionally, and in a sense easily. This is what commanders do in every military force. In every military, not even democratic military force. That's what commanders do. They have a system of values, and they educate their troops to behave according to that system of values. If it's democracy, then it includes democratic values. So that's the case in Israel and the United States. So not only, that's quite natural and not very complicated. In addition, there are all kinds of additional means of helping the commanders to get the right decision. I'll give you an example from the level of the battalion commander. In every battalion, there is the battalion commander, now there is the staff of the battalion commander. The operation officer, the intelligence officer, and other officers who are the staff of the battalion commander. And the same happens when you have a division and other larger groups. Now, on the staff of a battalion commander, every battalion commander who is involved in combat, there is a person called population officer. The duty of a population officer is to know everything possible about the presence of non-combatants, Palestinian non-combatants, in the areas in which that battalion is going to be active in a combative way. Okay. So he's not just looking in his towards the target and seeing their child or a bus. There is a person whose only duty, constantly, 24/7, is to gather that information about the non-combatants of the enemy. Which means it renders him a lot of help in complying with the principles of minimizing collateral damage, of drawing a distinction between combatants and non-combatants. So there are those means of enhancing his ability to act properly. And then there are on a larger scale, there are principles that Israel enacts, and they're not made public very often. You know how many, during war, during an operation, how many trucks enter Gaza Strip from Israel with food and medicine? I mean, we always hear about the siege. There is a siege, right? During the siege, so-called siege, there are thousands of trucks entering the Gaza Strip all the time, every day, full of food for the population and medicine for the sick. Now we used to bring into Gaza cement in order to build destroyed houses. We don't do it anymore because they used it for creating their tunnels. So do we have to send them hundreds of trucks in order to enable them to rebuild their destroyed tunnels?
If you're going to blockade the borders, then yeah.
They think that, I mean, some parties think that we do. No, we don't. If we could have trusted the United Nations officers, then we could have given the United Nations officer, a caravan of trucks to be used in order to rebuild houses. But we cannot. Most of his employees work for the Hamas. So we are in a very difficult situation. We do our best to act morally, both on the level of the simplest soldiers and the level of the IDF in general, and even the level of the state. But we are in a hostile period, in a hostile area, and not everyone praises us. So we'll manage. I mean, there is all Jewish history of not being praised, and we manage.
Yeah.
So I want to challenge that a little bit, because you said that you bring some men, and then essentially it's the corruption of Hamas sort of takes in, builds it for their tunnels. Mm-hmm. So at least 2 of the last 3 Gaza wars, the stated goal, the directive, was to end Hamas. At least 2 or 3 times, and all 3 times the Israeli government has failed. So meanwhile, you have the food and the thousands of trucks, tons of trucks going in to provide food and medicine, but there's no evidence that goes to the civilians, it goes to Hamas. Mm-hmm. So in order to help the citizens, one needs to, on the Israeli military level, end Hamas. But if 3 consecutive wars in the span of 5 years has failed to do so, doesn't there need to be either non-military or a different way to address that so that the citizens of Gaza can get the stuff that Israel is trying to provide them?
First of all, beware of your assumptions. To say that there were 3 operations whose goal was to destroy the Hamas.
Well, at least the last one, Netanyahu said it was to destroy Hamas. And I remember one, I think it was 2012, when it was trying to get Shalit and destroy Hamas.
Okay. I mean, I'm not interested in what the newspaper writes that Netanyahu said. I'm not interested at all. I'm interested in what the government tells officially in a document to the IDF to do. And there was no instruction that was given to the IDF, particularly because it's an impossible mission to accomplish, to destroy the Hamas. Okay? To destroy the Hamas is an impossible mission. I mean, Hamas is an organization. Can you destroy an organization? I mean, you can destroy their buildings. You can kill many of them. You cannot destroy an organization that consists of many thousands of people. You can weaken it. You can reach some form of understanding with it. And that form of understanding took place after each of the recent wars and operations. Okay. 2006, Second Lebanon, so-called Second Lebanon War, which also was an operation, and then the three other ones, they resulted in a period of the enemy not attacking us. The Hezbollah has not attacked us since 2006. Although they easily can. I mean, it's nothing for them. But they reached a conclusion that they should better not. For their own sake. They don't think about us, they think about themselves. From their own point of view, they don't attack us. For quite a long period now, a decade. Now the Hamas have their own political problems with respect to their relationships with the Fatah, with Abu Mazen of the Palestinian Authority, with Egypt, with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia, with whoever is pushing one's hands into the picture, and they have their own considerations. When we carry out an operation, it's a last resort. I mean, we can try to stop it by other means. War is last resort in just war doctrine, and in our practical, prudential way of thinking. I mean, a war is casualties. We don't want casualties. Okay, so
Can you clarify your question for me? Because I wasn't actually clear about it.
Part of it sort of seems that if war is a last resort, then on some level, considering how you've said it's impossible to share Hamas, you're willing to let Gazans die because you recognize there's no official way to end Hamas's homogeny of resources.
Doesn't that speak to the very first thing that was articulated here, which is not about Gazans dying, but defending oneself from attack from the outside? What alternatives would you suggest?
I don't know.
As a responsibility.
But my question is that, like, we're sort of framing this in a military point of view, that once we have decided to enter military conduct and enter a military operation, what is the conduct with which we do it? Not questioning necessarily why war is a resort at all.
You're asking a political question.
On some level, yes, yeah.
operations are meant to protect the citizens of Israel. The pursuit of peace with the Hamas is a must. I was on a committee that made recommendations to the Ministry of Defense with respect to the release of a person abducted by the enemy. So there is, without telling you any secrets, there are two levels here of your interaction with an enemy like the Hamas. On an official level, diplomatic level, you don't recognize them, you don't negotiate with them, you do nothing with them. Okay, they are an enemy. On a practical level, and the same goes with the United States and Taliban. No recognition, no negotiation, nothing. On the practical level, you have a soldier in their hands, so you want to release him. So on a practical level, there are all kinds of people who go between, like in our case it was Germany and Egypt, in the American case it was Qatar, who went between the Taliban and the United States, and eventually the soldier was released from the Taliban jail and given back to the United States, and the United States released 5 people from Guantanamo, and they stay in Qatar, under the eyes of the CIA, I may add. And so that was the arrangement. So Hamas, we cannot negotiate with them, recognize them, as long as they have their attitude towards Israel. And their attitudes towards Israel is not that, okay, like the Palestinian Authority, they are, first of all, they recognize Israel already in the Oslo agreements. Secondly, okay, there is a dispute about Jerusalem, dispute about the territories, dispute about refugees, okay, but they are willing to reach, they talk as if they're willing to reach an agreement. And those are the points that should be addressed. The Hamas is not there. The Hamas is not saying, okay, we're willing to reach an agreement with you, here are the points. The Hamas is interested in the elimination of Israel. a few days ago, they introduced a new version of the convent, saying that the previous version is still inactive, is still effective. Okay? Now, what does the previous version says? What does the present version say? That the Palestinian state is between the river and the sea, which means no place for Israel. The previous version was even anti-Semitic, in the sense of saying, okay, the ideal state is where the tree says there is Jew hiding on me, kill him. And the stone is going to say there is a Jew hiding behind me, kill him. Okay, that in that context.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not partner for peace, practically, politically. But our attitude should be, and to a certain extent is that we are willing to negotiate peace with everyone who is willing to recognize our existence, our identity as the nation state of the Jews, and to strike agreements concerning all kinds of debated points.
So to be fair, your question, which I understand now, it's probably not a question for this forum, right? It's a question in talking about what's the political outlook of the Israeli governments, Israeli coalitions, etc. Whether they are serious, disingenuous about negotiation. It's an important topic, but it's another topic. Other last thoughts, questions? Anybody who hasn't spoken? Yeah.
I have two questions, and we may not have time for either. We started a while ago. You said that the notion of victory in war is obsolete, but that we speak of accomplishing our missions and carrying out operations. Does that mean that the notion of war is also obsolete or not relevant here? That's question one. The second question is, we're using the label terrorist, which appears to be accurate. Does it have implications in terms of principles and rules as opposed to a label like enemy operative, enemy combatant, or guerrilla?
Okay. First of all, war is war. War is not obsolete. War is a violent friction between parties, done for the purposes of each party. And so there are missions here, there are missions on the other side of the battlefield, and there is war. But it's another type of war. I mean, there is a cyber warfare, which means you sit your computer and they sit at their computers and you fight each other. You want to destruct some of their system, they want to do it with your system. It's a war. It's a war. It's using violent means to cause harm to the enemy. But winning a victory in the classical sense, the end picture is waving of flags because there is no more enemy. The German military force does not exist anymore. The Syrian and Egyptian military forces at the end of the Six-Day War do not exist as military forces anymore. They're out of the picture. I mean, this is gone. This is gone. However, this is gone because there are some ways of for a guerrilla organization or a terrorist organization to go on working, although they got quite hit. Can you destroy Al-Qaeda? I think you can. I think we can. Actually, the West did destroy Al-Qaeda because American killed Osama bin Laden and many of his deputies, and there is just one organization that is happy to depict itself in terms of related to Al-Qaeda in Africa. I mean, practically Al-Qaeda does not exist as an enemy. But there are others. There are others, like the ISIS. Okay, can you destroy the ISIS? To the extent that ISIS is a military force, you can destroy it. To the extent that ISIS is a terrorist shooting people in Paris, you cannot. You cannot. They can't go on doing it forever. So there is war against them, done by all kinds of means, but there is no victory in the classical sense of victory. The second question?
Second question is discerning between different labels that we give to...
Oh yeah, okay. Since they are their rights, I mean, we don't recognize the Hamas and Hezbollah as military forces. to be recognized as a military force, international law requires them to comply with the principles of international law. So since they blur the distinction between combatants and non-combatants, since they act from residential areas, since they attack our residential areas, since there is no principle in the book that they don't violate. Because of that, they are not considered a military force. Therefore, for example, if we capture one of them, he's not a prisoner of war. He's not a soldier captured by the other party. He's a criminal. He's a terrorist. Criminal if he resides here, a terrorist if he resides there, and he can be brought to the court and put to jail for five consecutive life sentence or things like this. So there is, soldiers have rights because their military forces comply with the principles. But if they don't, then there are no rights. That's the major difference in the attitude towards a captured terrorist and a captured, say, Syrian soldier.
Just a couple more.
Yeah, so I actually want to be attentive to the time and would like to offer a remark to all of the students that we brought to sort of close the session, as well as thank you so very deeply for your presence with us. And one would think that what I'm going to say we should have said at the beginning, but I think it's more educationally appropriate to say it now. We've put a program together to bring these future Orthodox rabbis who are going to serve Jews in America to Israel for these 2 weeks, precisely because we sensed that there's a predisposition in America, maybe from what we've heard in Israel too, for people to have simplistic understandings and to have those understandings be driven by a priori assumptions and beliefs, as it were. In order to, we brought our students here in order to break down the process of those assumptions so they would get a sense of nuance and facts and information and understanding. So we did that in a couple of ways. Everybody in this room has had an engagement with different spokespeople for different ways of understanding ideologies of religious Zionism. So they met with Rav Yehuda Gilad, Tomer Persiko, Dov Berkowitz, Nathaniel Elyashiv in Eli. They met with a Rav Dreyfus who was able to speak about Rav Shagar's thinking about religious Zionism. And those voices were nuanced and different. What you've done for us this morning is enabled us to gain a prism of values and principles of engagement that inform the complexity of responsibility and decisions that a people who are living in a democratic state need to assume responsibility for on the ground. And every future rabbi in the room would be remiss if they go back to America and don't take this morning's talk into account to challenge their thinking and to get a deeper understanding of their own assumptions and predispositions before speaking to a community. And so you've added a dimension that we haven't had up until today. And if I put it together with what we've already encountered, you've offered us a very powerful tool for understanding the responsibilities of the State of Israel, whether one identifies left or right, as it were. And so thank you very, very, very much.
May I say something?
You may.
Not directly related to the questions we discussed. I take Israel. I think if you want to look at Israel on a large scale, and the Independence Day is a perfect date for doing it, then you should compare it to the process of the growth of a person. First you have a baby, 0-day baby, but he's a living human being. He's alive and kicking. And then you have the adult. And then in between you have, about between 10 and 20 years of growth. Now you don't evaluate the activities an adolescent, the way you evaluate the ideas and activities of an adult person. Those are two different projects. Now Israel, I compare Israel, although we are almost 70 years old, it's nothing. 70 years in the life of a state. Think about where the United States had been 70 years after foundation. Okay? Not very far from where it presently is. And so we are a maturing state, an adolescent state. When you look at say 12 years old, 12 years is not good, 11 years old, okay? 11 years old, boy or girl, there are things they know how to do perfectly well. Like adults, and sometimes computers, cyber, even better than the adults. There are things they don't know how to do perfectly well because they're not mature enough. They're in a process of maturation. And we have to be compassionate, we have to be understanding. They're growing up. I mean, they're 11 years old, okay? So they're not adults. And so some of their views are wrong, some of their attitudes are not right. They are in the process of maturation. Now, I say the same about Israel. I mean, a state involves, 50 areas of significant activities, okay? Just throw the number 50. It could be 30 or 70, whatever you like. Now, among those, there are ones where we are not mature. We're immature. I mean, look at the formula Jewish and democratic state. We are still fighting the meaning of this most basic constitutional terms that depict our identity. We're still fighting it, okay? I have my formula, but the others have their own formula. So we're still fighting it. I mean, it's immature. Identity has not been made crystal clear in our process of maturation. So there are quite a number of areas where we are still not mature. You mentioned the fact that I wrote the Code of Ethics for the ministers of government. Inaccurate. I mean, the Prime Minister asked me to, and two other people, to write it, and we did. And we filed in the report. And there was a committee of ministers discussing our suggestion and writing their own proposal, okay, which naturally was half the size of our proposal, half the number of norms to be imposed. And it was not adopted by the government, not even discussed by the government. Now, I take it to be an indication of immaturity. Immaturity. I don't need norms, I know what I'm doing, don't disturb me. Who needs your norms, you professors of law and philosophy and things. I mean, leave us alone. The same happened to me with the parliament. In another committee, we worked on it 3.5 years and handed in a book of norms for members of parliament. Nothing happened. It's immature. But one of the most mature areas in Israel, although not perfectly mature, is the IDF.
Interesting.
It's an organization that cannot afford not being mature, because we have to fight all the time. And if we don't have to fight right now, we have to build our abilities to fight when necessary. And I think in terms of the morality of war, in the compliance with just war doctrine, with doctrines of military ethics, we are more mature than the rest of the world. So there are areas in which we are perfectly mature, and there are areas in which you should forgive the boy or girl for acting immaturely. Okay, they're in the process of becoming.
Of growing up. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.